What up, guys? Well, how you doing? Welcome back to the channel. In this video, I'm going to explain to you why I got the Sony FX3. Let's get into it.
It's the actor's job to avoid impediments to their performance. It's the actor's job to strive for 100% effectiveness. Naturally, we never succeed, but it's the pursuit that's meaningful.
Who are you?
You can call me Marabella.
So over the years, I've tried to create the best video possible. I remember when I started out recording videos on my phone like anybody would. This was 2020. It was the first time that I signed up to YouTube. And back then, I wanted to create content to be able to help people. My whole agenda was I wanted to create content that help people have something to do during the pandemic. But one of the challenges that I faced is I had never done this before, and I ran into many problems. I did a lot of research, and I was told to use the app Filmic Pro, which helps shooting videos on your mobile phone, and then you take it from there. But for a long time, this was good, but I felt super limited to what I could achieve with my phone. A lot of times it would be space. You'd run out of space. I had the iPhone 10 at that time, and I ran out of space. So I had to upgrade at a certain point. And through research and through YouTube, if you search how to start a YouTube channel, I think the main thing that you, in that time, like the main camera you had to get was the Canon M50, which you'd use for vlogging and doing all that. So that was the first camera that I got. And the main reason that I got that camera was it was something that I could afford. But even at that time, it wasn't really like, I've said it if you saw my Sony A7C video, that I could, the main thing that results in me buying something is affordability. Price is a big issue. The M50 at that time costed almost like $850 Canadian. So I could save up for that and then make that transition. My hope was in investing in that camera, I would be able to make my money back as fast as possible, but that did not turn out to be the case. It ended up taking me many years before I started making money off of YouTube. But when I was using the Canon, I had the Canon from 2020, 2021. If you check out my channel, Uncle Kevin React, a lot of those videos were done on the Canon M50. Then I started doing podcasts, and with podcasts, the main thing that you learn is you need to, essentially you need two cameras to shoot. So I ended up getting the Sony A6400 because that was a slight better upgrade from the Canon, but I also wanted to be able to have a tiny camera that you could use for vlogging, which I never did. But the number one problem that I had when I got the Sony A6400 with the Canon M50 was the color science is completely different on both cameras. So I ended up having to adjust a lot of color grading, which I didn't know, and I didn't understand how to do it. I used channels like Think Media to learn how to do this. So from there, I moved to get the Sony. So what my goal was, I was to sell off my Canon M50 because I like the Sony color science, and then was to get another A6400 and just have two cameras with the same color science. And then when I did that, I got the A7 IV because when I went to the store, they're like, oh, we don't really have the Sony A6400, but we have the A7 IV. We just came out at that period of time, and the guy was really selling it. But that was beyond my budget. That was beyond what I had scheduled to. I was willing to pay another $1,400. I wasn't really willing to spend almost $4,000 on a camera. But when he saw me and I was looking at it long term, which is another factor in how I choose my cameras, I was looking at how long would I have the A7 IV, and is it like, what's the cost benefit analysis? So I did that in my head at that time, and I was like, oh yeah, it would make sense for me to get the A7 IV and then use it not necessarily just as my podcast camera, because back then my goal was just to have two A6400s and then to use those two A6400s as my main cameras. But I started thinking of doing professional shoots, and I was like, what would be a more professional camera to get? So I thought, oh yeah, I should just get the A7 IV. This then makes me become more professional and seem more professional at a very affordable price. And then I got that one. I do know like one of the most recommended Sony cameras to get is the A7S3, but that was beyond my budget. It cost like 5,000 Canadian, so that was unheard of. So I ended up getting the A7 IV and pairing it with my A6400. The number one challenge that I ran into that was, one is APC format and the other one is full frame. And when you're in Final Cut, when whatever you use to edit your videos, there's a big difference. And I didn't know, because I wasn't back then as technically gifted as I've learned to be throughout the year. I really didn't know how to match the image and how to use it as B-roll and how to use it, So I ended up selling off my A6400 to upgrade to the Sony A7C, which you saw in my other video, which was a full frame, but it had the same specs and features as a A6400. But there were many problems with the A7C that I could not foretell would be coming along. It's totally different from the A7 IV. They're not the same camera. It's a different camera body. And like the autofocus is way, way different. And then we fast forward that to recently, what's happened in my life is, as I've become better at video, as I've been posting stuff on my Instagram, a lot of people have been paying attention to the work that I've been doing. And I started getting opportunities to be a professional. I started getting opportunities to work on different projects. The A7 IV has been clutch for me. I use it for photography. I use it for videography as well. But one of the challenges that I had in one of my client works was, with the A7 IV, I don't know about the stabilization, but I didn't have my tripod, I didn't have anything, and I was using it handheld. And the thing is, when you're doing anything handheld as a human, I don't know about you guys, but my hands, they shake a lot, and that affects the video. So there isn't much great stabilization within the A7 IV from experience, not necessarily from if you break it down and you have the specs and you know better than me. But for me, what I felt was, anytime I shoot video handheld, the shaking is too much. I shot another short film with the A7 IV, and they wanted to have a lot of handheld movement. And one of the problems we had was the shakiness of the camera, of the human. You can see it in the camera. So I know they call it IBIS, image stabilization. I don't know how good it is within the A7 IV, but my experience has not been that good. And this affects the quality of work that I'm able to produce and give to the clients. So the amount of time it takes to stabilize and post is just ridiculous. So this gave me a problem which needed solving. So what I did essentially was to try and find ways that I can be a little better from the A7 IV. The reviews online are great. Everybody says beautiful things about this camera. But the main thing that happened was, I started to look for ways for myself to become a little better. And this is when I started doing research. And the research was like, oh, the A7S3 is much better. And me looking at it, once you start having clients, you can just charge them to buy a camera, right? So I started doing research, and the next level up from an A7 IV for me, I feel, was the Sony A7S3. And I started doing a lot of research on that and just looking into the Sony A7S3 or the Blackmagic, which is quite cheaper. But then with the Blackmagic, it's a whole different camera. It's a whole different system for me to start learning. I'm somebody who just likes learning one thing and moving forward. And I've been so acquainted with the Sony system to the point that I'm like, nah, I think I'm good. I'll just stick to the Sony system, and rather than move to a different system and have to learn about it. So I'll just save up and get the Sony A7S3. Then I saw a video that had a comparison between the Sony A7S3 and the FX3, which is why we're making this video. And when I was watching it, they were essentially saying the Sony FX3 is essentially the Sony A7S3, but with a fan and no EV. I'm someone who doesn't necessarily use the EV anyway. When I'm shooting my videos by myself, I'm looking at the flip out screen, or I'm using a monitor if I'm shooting short films. So I don't really use an EV other than if I'm taking photos. But for photos, my main camera is the A7 IV regardless. So that will not change whether I get another camera body. And then again, price became a major factor because here in Canada, there's a $600 difference between the Sony A7S3 and the FX3. But the main thing that I liked about the FX3 was what people would say. It has a fan that helps with cooling that you can barely hear, the ability to get it with the handle that you don't have to buy in post. So those factors, price-wise, it made sense for me if I was to invest into something, to invest into the FX3 which has a lot of limitations. People speak about it doesn't have ND filters. I don't know, like on body ND filters, but I'm coming from an A74, so it's not an experience that I had. But I guess if I had used any other cinema line, that would be a gripe for me. But for right now, it's not. Um, so the main thing I'd say is what made me buy the FX3 is price. And then the second thing is at that price range as well, it's like the same amount of money you would pay for an FX3, you can get the red Komodo body. And in doing that, I thought to myself, well, I might just get the red because the red system is just something like on a professional level, it just looks super professional. It's something that the red colors are just amazing, and that costs like 5,500 Canadian. So it's like the same. It's literally the same price as the FX3. But the number one challenge that I had with that is just to get the starter kit of the red Komodo, it costs you 7,500, and to get it working, you need minimum $11,000 for a camera, and that's just not something I was willing to invest. That's not just something that I'm willing to spend money on. That's not amount of money that I have, regardless of that. My business is just starting out. I don't really have those big clients that I can be able to justify owning an $11,000 camera body. And also, like with the red is, for me, I'm not really want to always have like a focus puller with me when we're shooting, which would be fine if I had a friend or someone, an assistant who can help with that. But one of the challenges with it is it doesn't have the autofocus, and then there's a lot that you have to learn as well, which was the same challenge as getting the Black Magic, right? It was also about having to learn a new camera system. But I am keeping an eye out for the red system, because my thought process is always one thing when you're offering clients packages. You can have the red, and that's just something that allows you to charge a premium, and that camera setup of the red is something that just looks professional. It's a dumb thing to think about, but people really do value how you look when you show up on set. When you show up with the red system, it just looks more professional. But for now, I'll settle for an FX3 because that's where I'm at in my career as well. I'm someone who just recently started I'm someone who just recently registered my business, so it's not really that big towards generating revenue whereby I can just spend however much I want, amount of money that I want on gear. But I feel like for me, the FX3 is a good starting point into the cinema line. I know some people will say, why not just get the FX30? It costs half the price. For me, I think my argument is always, once you go full frame, it's very difficult to go back to APC. And the other challenge that I have with that is the lenses that I have. I have Sony full frame lenses. So to be able to learn the math of what it means to have a full frame lens on APC format and all that math is just a lot of headache for someone who just wants to press record and keep it moving. For me, the other thing that I want you guys to know is when you're looking at this channel, it probably has like, I don't know how many subscribers. Thank you for subscribing if you have. The Sony FX3 is quite expensive for me as well. Like Canadian, it costs 5,600. So in buying this thing, it cost me all my life savings. It's cost me all my money. It's literally cost me everything that I have. And the chances of failure are high. Like the chances of not getting hired for work is high. The chances of this channel not blowing up is high. The chances of this, but
why even begin?
When something is important enough, you do it even though the odds are not in your favor.
The chances of success as well are super high. The chances of making quality work are super high. And the main reason why I chose to get an FX3 to upgrade to it is essentially the 7S3, and that helps me be a little better from this. And I hope that the one thing that I saw in a lot of reviews is it has great stabilization, it has great focus. But I don't know these things because I haven't used it yet, and I'm looking forward to using it. The other thing, and that I have to give you guys a disclaimer, is I didn't get the FX3 brand new. I got it on Amazon, but when you're buying on Amazon and then it shows you this little sign on the side which says used but good or used but open, what those signs, and usually what happens is people buy products and send them back, or it might have a forward and something like that. So for me, instead of paying 5,600, I ended up paying 4,600, which is the same price as the Sony A7S3 that I ended up paying the same price, that I would have paid for an S3. So I'm very happy with this camera. We haven't used it. I'm opening it up in this video at the end. So my advice to you before we do the open up is life is too short to worry about if something will yield you a positive ROI. If deep in your heart you feel like you need a certain tool to help you tell your story, then find a way. Once you do, work your ass off to make your vision possible. We only have one responsibility in this world is to have a vision. And once you have a vision, is to execute that vision, to find help as much as you need. You can have a story to tell. Tell it the best way you know how. If you feel like, if me one day I feel like I need an FX9 to tell the best story that I need to tell, I'll find every way, shape, and form I can to have that FX9. I'll not be satisfied with my A74, my FX3 video if I knew that having a better camera would help me tell a better story. The goal, my belief moving into 2023 is just to be a little bit better. And if you can be a little bit better in everything that you do, I believe you are destined for greatness.
Answer.
No, come on. What's your real name?
When we're on set, I prefer to only be referred to by my character's name. It helps me invest in the reality of the story. I've tried it both ways, and I'm always just a tiny bit better when I don't break character. And if I can be a tiny bit better, I want to be.
So at this very moment, I'll put the iPad away and we can get into unboxing the FX3. And yes, I did help Jeff Bezos make a little bit more money. So yeah, do click on my Amazon links, please. Let's all make money from this guy. So yeah. So it comes in this box, and I'm assuming it has the microphone thing attached to it, which is very great. So yeah, this is essentially the new beast, full frame cinema line. It totally looks different from what I'm used to, but I look forward to what I can do with this camera, man. Yeah. Anyway, with that said, I hope you guys found some useful advice. I'm not going to tell you all there's a lot of people who've made, like, I'm not gonna do a technical breakdowns of this camera. There's a lot of people who've done that over the years that you can look up. Gerald Dandan is one of the great ones that you can look at. I'll leave some links in the bio and stuff. Comment which camera do you use, what's your reasoning. For me, in summary, the reasoning that I use for buying cameras is, number one is cost. Number two is what type of image do I get out of it, and do I necessarily need it to help tell my story. Number three, ease of use. I had a gripe with Canon when I tried to go live and it would just be weird. And number four is aesthetics, man. Like, does it look nice? This looks pretty. And yeah, those are my factors. Let me know in the comment section, what are your factors when it comes to choosing your camera of choice. I'll be seeing you guys in the next one.